Hello everyone, this is Victor Dantas here from the Zero to Hero Academy. Over the years, we have helped multiple professionals either get into the Power Platform market or some of the seasoned professionals within the industry up their game within the low-code technologies. And we are here to announce that we have a special program coming up between March 19th and May 30th. This is the Power Pages and AI Zero to Hero Mentorship Program. Join us, click on the link, access the lessons. You know how we do it. Live lessons on Teams, and then the recorder goes up to YouTube and you can follow if you are in different time zones, but we prefer it to join it live. Connect, ask questions. So go ahead, invite your colleagues, your dad, your mom, your grandpa. Let's everybody join the fun. All right, we'll see you there. Take care.
Introduce our fabulous speaker for today, who is Nick, who joined us actually on Tuesday as well. And Nick is going to be telling us all about how to extend Power Pages using Power Automate. Okay, so over to you, Nick.
All right, I'm just about to share my screen. So whoops, we don't want to see my email. Cool. I just want to get this going. And just want to make sure that you see the Zero to Hero cover page or splash page or whatever you want to call it. Yep, good. Thumbs up. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. I do recognize some faces from Tuesday, so I just want to make sure I set the expectations correctly, that I am just going to go over the exact same deck and the exact same demo that I did on Tuesday. So if you do have other things to do, no problem. Or if you missed something, hopefully you'll be able to catch this time around. It's great to see people back. I don't want to discourage that, but also want to set the expectations right as well. So all good. Today we're going to be talking about, if I can get my deck to kick in here. Where did my mouse go? There we go. All right. We're going to be talking about Power Pages and using Power Automate. For those of you who are new or don't know me, my name is Nick Doelman. I am a Microsoft MVP, an independent consultant. I call myself a Power Platform trainer, specialist, and coach. And I did do a stint at Microsoft. I worked on a lot of the documentation. There's the QR code. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you have any questions about today's presentation or things like that, I'm also going to be at quite a few conferences coming up. So if you're going to Color Cloud or Dynamics Minds or European Power Platform Conference or any of those, I will be there in person. So if you want to come say hi, definitely don't do that. Don't be shy. And again, today, same as what we talked about Tuesday, I'm going to be talking about extending Power Pages using Power Automate. And this seems kind of interesting, and you kind of wonder, why would we do this? So we're going to talk about why. Why are we going to use Power Automate and Power Pages? We're going to talk about some use cases, some very high level, but of course, as you meet with your customers or you're working on your own projects, you probably have your own use cases that you might want to consider this for. And then what we're going to do, we're going to do a demo. We're going to build a Power Pages Power Automate flow. We're going to add that to a web page. We're going to see how we're going to grab that input, how we can call that flow, and how we can see the results of the flow. That's the exciting part. We can get flow to do a bunch of stuff and have it spit back some information to us, so be able to see that. We are going to talk just a little bit about licensing, just to give you a bit of heads up there, just so it's not big surprises when you're working your projects. And yeah, let's dive in. So very first question comes up, why would we bother using Power Automate with Power Pages? We can, we have the web API, we can submit forms, we can read information, on the back end in Dataverse, we could do a bunch of stuff. We can write plugins and all this. Why would we want to bother with Power Automate? Well, a couple, good reasons. Right now, if you've gone in and built your own Power Canvas apps, or you build Power Automate, you notice that in Power Pages, the first time you go in, you start designing your pages and start adding components, you can connect to Dataverse. And that's it, pretty much. Power Pages, you can't just use that full range of 1,000 connectors that are available to Canvas apps and to Power Automate. We are getting a little bit better with that without using Power Automate. So yes, you can connect to Dataverse Through virtual tables, you can connect to a lot of other data sources. And of course, there is also the DocuSign and the Stripe integration, which are part of Power Pages. But overall, if you wanted to connect to any of these other APIs or connectors, you're kind of stuck. So this opens up that world to us. Now, if you say, well, I could use the web API, that's true, but we're limited to create, read, update, and delete and associate. We can't call custom actions at this time. We just can't use the web API to call a Dataverse custom action. So this is, again, is where Power Automate can kick in. Now, if we said, well, you know what, I could just write a flow and I could trigger that off of my Dataverse table. So if I fill out a form on a Power Pages site, write it to a record in Dataverse, I know that I can create a Power Automate flow that will be triggered on that record creation or that record update. And so why do I need to bother calling it from Power Pages? A really cool thing here is that Power Automate flow that you write on Dataverse, that's going to be asynchronous. It's going to update the data and it's going to go off and do its thing. Chug, 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 comes back eventually. There's no real user interface here. With Power Automate on Power Pages, it is synchronous, meaning it's going to go, it's going to do its thing, and then it's going to come back to your page. And while you're going to be there waiting, now it's going to be very quick as well. It runs very fast. So you probably don't have much time waiting any more than you would if you use the web API or that kind of thing. So that's really part of the key. And I found, doing this, it really reduces a lot of this development time. I don't need to write a lot of code to do a lot of data manipulation or web API stuff. And don't get me wrong, I love the web API, but using Power Automate actually gives me a lot more flexibility. I don't have to worry about creating things in Azure like companion apps or using the OAuth implicit grant flow or do these other things, which sometimes can get a little bit complicated. So again, we're moving on. Some use cases, and these are just things I kind of thought of off the top of my head. So you can call external services and get a results. If you look at the Microsoft Docs, you'll see the example there's weather. So that you could put in your location. It will go kick off that Power Automate flow, talk to the MSN weather connector, get the weather and write it back to your web page. So if you have a travel site or something like that, that's cool. You could do like a currency conversion. So, there's a currency conversion services that you could get on your Power Automate as a connector. You have to pay for these services, but you could go and if you have like an e-commerce type site or you're doing like a calculation of how much it's going to cost, I'm paying in euros, how much does this cost me in Canadian dollars? You can do that currency conversion of the day. If you're shipping something, how much of the shipping cost going to be? Where are you shipping it to? How much does the package weigh? You can pass these as parameters through a Power Automate flow, which could call like a shipping site like FedEx or UPS or Canada Post or one of these, calculate the shipping cost and spit that back so your user on their site will be able to know how much this is going to cost. Also like tax calculations, where are you buying this from? Are you within a country or do you have to pay taxes at all? And then of course, if there's some Dataverse custom actions, you could trigger those custom actions from Power Automate that you call from your Power Pages site. So this is a bit of a workaround if you wanted to call custom actions from Power Pages. So what are some of these requirements, some of the things we need to collect from a recipe before we're going to build our brand new Power Automate routine with our Power Pages site? Well, first off, we're going to use the Power Pages trigger and response. So when we're creating our flow, those are the trigger and response action or connectors that we're going to use. We need to call the Power Pages action using code, meaning we are going to have to write a little bit of JavaScript, an Ajax call to call that Power Pages action. There is no component that we can drag onto the form. I absolutely wish there was. That'd be the greatest thing if we could just add it and put in the parameters and away we go. That's not there yet. We do need to get licensing for the Power Automate and those premium connectors if you don't already have that licensing already. And then also you need to consider security and user access to run flows, because if you're just letting anonymous users come into your site and they're running a, inquiry to see when, the next concert tickets or something, you could burn through your flow runs pretty quickly. So you do want to consider who can actually run these flows from your site. All right. Demo. Who's ready for a demo? So I'm going to dive in. I'm going to minimize this and I'm going to go to my site here. Oops. So basically, I'm in the Power Pages Design Studio. So for those of you who might be new to Power Pages, you can create a new Power Pages site, and then you go into this tool called the Design Studio. The Design Studio is where we can go and we can create pages, we can change our headings. It's kind of a what you see is what you get type of interface. So pretty cool stuff, but that's not really what we're focusing on today. What we're focusing on is what we want to run a Power Automate flow from our Power Pages site. Now, unfortunately, like I mentioned before, if I click here and I want to add a component, here are the components I can add: text, image, button, video, iframe, spacer, form, multi-step form, list. Where's my Power Automate? It's not there. I wish it was. It's not. We're going to have to add this through code. I'll show you in a few minutes, but first we need to create a Power Automate flow. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into the setup workspace. Remember, we have 4 different workspaces: pages, styling, data, setup. So let me go into the setup workspace. And we have a bunch of things here. So we have this section called integrations, where we can add, of course, a Copilot, some external apps, and this is where you would add your DocuSign or your Stripe integration. And of course, we have Cloud Flows. So let's go into Cloud Flows. And if I already have another Cloud Flow that I written earlier, I could use that, or I could just add a brand new flow. That's what I'm going to do today. So I'm just going to click on New Flow. And then what that's going to do, it's going to kind of start that flow editor. Now, a couple things to consider here. We could go into Power Automate directly. However, the particular connector doesn't use the new designer. It's still using the old designer, which between you and me, I kind of like the old designer a little bit better. I was on board with the new designer, but I just find a few things a little clunky right now, but hopefully they'll sort that out. That's another rant for another day. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for these connectors and triggers. Now remember that we're going to need to use the Power Pages one. So I'm going to type in Power Pages, or Power Page, and we see here we have that Power Pages connector here. I'm going to select that. And here's the trigger: when Power Pages calls a flow. And that's all good. So here's when it calls a flow, we're going to add an input. If you've written Canvas apps before and integrated Power Automate with Canvas apps, you're probably very familiar with this particular process. It's very similar. I'm going to pass a parameter. I'm going to pass it a parameter called category, and I'm going to show you why in a minute. So I'm just going to call this category, and this is going to be the input. We're going to pass this from our Power Pages site. So, and of course we could add other parameters here as well, but that's the first thing we're going to do. Now, next thing, we have to our disposal literally about 1,000 different connectors that we can connect to. If you read the documentation, we can connect to MSN Weather. We could connect to AI Builder. We look at some of our standard connectors. We can connect to Office 365. Some of our premium connectors, there's a whole bunch of premium connectors we can connect to. And of course, custom connectors that you could create yourself if you're into building custom connectors. I'm going to use a very famous, a very important connector in all these thousands, probably one of the top connectors, and that is the Chuck Norris fax connector. So here we go, the Chuck Norris AIO. We're going to select that. And here are the amazing things that the Chuck Norris IO can do. That can get me not Chuck Norris fax random or search for particular ones. I'm going to choose random. I want to get some random Chuck Norris facts. And here is that category. It's going to want to put in that category. So here are the categories that's available. We want to remember that. For now, I'm going to put in the custom value, and I'm going to go to my dynamic content. So if you've written Power Automate, you've probably done this before. And I'm going to go into the category field here. So this is what's going to pass down. That's that parameter from that field. That's all good. And then now I want to return that to my Power Pages site. So I'm going to go into, again, Power Pages in terms of my operations. So here's Power Pages, and I want to now return values to Power Pages. And I'm going to choose my output, and then I'm just going to choose text. And here I'm just going to put response or result. And I'm going to look at my text here, and then I'm going to actually get the value from that random Chuck Norris fact. So that's going to spit back that random Chuck Norris fact back out to my Power Pages site. So once that's all done, I'm going to go and give this a name. Let's call this Chuck Norris. Today's April 4th, just because I have a ton of different flows that are named very similar, as you may have seen. Hit save. And this is just going to create a Power Automate flow, the same as you would any other Power Automate flow. And you can go in directly into the Power Automate site and edit this and make changes. And of course, you want to set up things like your service principals and your connection references and all of this other fun stuff. And usually what I like to do is I put a lot of my steps in scopes. So check for error handling. Today, we just built a very simple flow. So now what's going to happen, we're back into the setup workspace in our Power Pages site. We have our flow name. Cool. We have this URL. Now what we want to do is copy that URL. We're going to need this later, so we're going to copy that. And now we're going to also have to add our security roles. We just aren't going to provide a random URL for someone to run. We're going to have to add roles to that. So I'm going to add the anonymous users and authenticated users. Now, normally I might just want to stick this to authenticated users, depending what it is, or I might go in and create my own custom web roles. And that's usually what I would do. I don't have any set up in this environment. No worries. These will work. And of course, by adding these, I'm going to get the message, of course, saying, hey, anybody can run this. Add. And because this is a demo, it's decided to take its time. All right, not missing anything. This is all good. So anyways, while we're just waiting on that, I do want to talk about the fact that this URL is also secure. So I did copy this. That's cool. Now what I can do is if I actually go into another site here, and I want to just try to run that directly, run that URL. It should not let me, because this is part of the security that's set up. It knows that this particular Cloudflow API has to come directly from being called from a Power Pages site. So it is thinking about it. It's going to want me to log in permissions. I will see what happens. And now I did, to be fair, yeah, it's telling me I can't be found. Basically, we're getting a 404 error. It is being blocked. That's perfect. All right, so, and maybe because it's not been added yet, that's a little strange. I'm just going to remove the anonymous role just to see if that is enough to shake things up. Okay, no problem. This is why we have, this is like a cooking show. I have prepared something earlier. So I'm going to pop over to this other design studio that I have set up from before. I'm going to go into my setup workspace here. And whoops, I'm just going to move my teams over. All right, and if I go into my cloud flows here, you see here I have a Power Pages flow going to that URL, and I have the anonymous user set up here. So that's all good. So the next thing I need to do would go in is to create a page specifically to run that particular flow. So I'm going to go in here, and I do have some other pages set up here as part of this, but I will actually go and show you the process that I followed. Just going to do a quick sound check. Does folks still hear me and see me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. Just because when
Sound
that flow wasn't being added, I'm like, oh, did I lose internet? Because I've done that before where I've talked to myself for like 45 minutes and no one was listening. So anyways, what I would do, same thing, Design Studio, I'll go and create a new page. I'm going to call this the Chuck Norris Thursday session. And I'm going to just pick a standard layout. and it's thinking about it. And basically here, we're creating this page. Now, again, we don't, like I mentioned before, we don't have the ability to add Power Automate to this through this component. So what I'm going to need to do is click on probably my favorite button in the Power Pages Design Studio, and that's the Edit Code button. And this is going to open up Visual Studio Code. And I think this is amazing. I wish this was in model-driven apps as well, that I could just go into Visual Studio Code and add some JavaScript, and away I go. But anyways, what this is going to do is this is going to open up sort of that HTML view of that web page. It's thinking about it here. That's my one from earlier. But here, it's created that Chuck Norris Thursday session. And you can see here, we see the divs and the HTML and all that other fun stuff that we are basically going to want to create or manipulate for our site. So the first thing I'm going to do is, yes, what I want to do is I want to be able to capture that category. Remember, they had the list of categories, and then I'm also going to want to add a submit button so I can submit that category to my Power Automate, and then I'm going to want something to display that for me. So I can begin to go in and begin to manipulate this or add my HTML code, make it a little bit bigger here. But I'm also very lazy. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go ask my buddy to do it. My buddy's name is Copilot. And I'm going to say, Copilot, I want some help with this web page. Now, I've created a prompt from earlier. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what that prompt looks like in my notepad here. And basically, I'm saying create a well-formatted web page with the title Chuck Norris Facts. Add a pick list containing the following values. So here are all those values that I can get from the Chuck.io website, but those are going to be those categories. And then I'm asking it, add a form submit button and a hidden section where we can show a paragraph that we generated by a script I will add later. So pretty much straightforward. I've added this. Now I'm going to go into my Copilot prompt. And I'm going to say, Copilot, do your magic and create all this stuff. So these are the types of things that Copilot is good for. That if you're not comfortable with doing HTML or you're still learning or you're not quite sure how to do something, this is where Copilot can help. If I and be honest, if I told Copilot to create this whole site or page for me, it does break down a little bit. I'm going to show you that next. Now for the first part, I'm just going to inject this. So it's added this code. Of course, even though we have Copilots to our disposal, sometimes it's also good to have a little bit of an idea of what it's doing to make sure this code makes sense. Looks good to me. I'm plugged that in. I'm going to now save that Control S in my Visual Studio code for the web. I'm going to go back to Design Studio. I'm going to hit the sync button here. And what's going to happen is it should show me this page, what it looks like. And of course, Power Platform. What do we do most of the day for Power Platform developers and makers and admins? We stare at little spinny things. But here we go. We have this Chuck Norris Facts website. We had the little button here with the drop down with all the categories. We have our submit button. We have a title. Of course, I can go in and manipulate or style this up a little bit. Let's just take a quick look to see what this looks like. I'm going to choose desktop. And like I said, we just stare at spinners all day. That's our job. Of course, I find that you might find this too if you're doing your demos or presentations. If you have Teams running, it really bogs down things. Interesting thing, I upgraded my laptop. I've added a whole bunch of extra memory. So I have 48 gigs, and I find still doing demos with Teams, it still grinds to a halt a little bit. So memory isn't always everything. All right, so we're just waiting for this to load up. And also, if you have questions, definitely throw them up in the chat window. I can answer them after. I know there's a few other folks on that are here that can maybe help answer those questions as well. Or if someone asks a question and you know the answer, feel free to answer. It's all good. We're a community here. But here we have this web page. See, here are all my different drop downs, and then I could hit submit. Now, submit, we haven't wired anything up to this yet, but we can see that we've used Copilot to create this page. That's pretty cool. I'm going to now go back to the design studio. And again, I'm going to go back into actually, I'm going to go into Visual Studio Code. I still have that tab open. What I want to do now is actually add that script code to the bottom here. Now, if you go to Microsoft Docs, there is an example script, and I would recommend you use that to build out your script. Don't do this from ground up initially. You'll just kind of bang your head against the wall. I did try to get Copilot to help out a little bit. Copilot was kind of helpful, but also kind of not. I basically said, add an event listener to the submit button. The function should take the pick list value from the above and pass it as a JSON object called payload to an element called event data using the data sub-element category, the payload, and then calling this particular URL. The URL should return the text from a field called result. Basically described what I want that code to do. So it does generate code, but it doesn't actually work right off the bat. But I do, again, want to kind of demonstrate the power of Copilot. Now, what I would probably do in a real situation, if I didn't have that sample code, I would probably use Copilot and work at this piece by piece to get the various components going first. That's what I've been finding is most successful using the Copilot, especially within the Power Pages one, is just try to get the bare bones and start to build up from there and build up your whole thing, as opposed to going full on bulk and saying, here, build me this. It's kind of like turning all your stuff over to a junior developer and they go off and they build something and you look at it and you're like, it's totally not what I asked for. So it's generated this code. So I'm going to put my cursor here. I'm just going to inject this. And we see that we do have a submit. It is calling an Ajax here. If I try to run this, I am going to get into errors. So instead, what I'll do is I'll show you the code that I did sort of half copy from the doc site and kind of manipulated to get everything working. So basically, this is a little bit different. My script, I'm getting that element, that category. I'm hitting that submit button, so that submit button is now wired up. I'm getting that pick list value. I'm establishing the URL. That's the URL we copied earlier when we added that Power Automate flow in the setup. I'm creating that JSON object. I'm creating my payload. And then I'm basically using stringifying it using the shell section and then calling the Ajax save post method. It's passing that payload, which is going to pass it to Power Automate. It's going to do its thing. And then when it's done, it's going to take that response and tell me what my Chuck Norris fact is. And then if not, it's going to give me an alert that it's failed. So we've done all this. I'm just going to close these. I'm going to go back to my design studio. Here is that page that I created. Now, I also created a little bit of extra styling on it as I was putting this demo together. So we have Chuck Norris facts, same deal, drop down, submit button. Let's now hit the preview. And again, Power Platform Life. Let's look at spinners for a few minutes. Let's check our emails. Let's get distracted. Let's go on LinkedIn. And then half an hour later, we realize, what were we working on again?
That is so me. I do that all the time.
Exactly, right? I'm glad I'm not the only one. So anyways, we're here. Chuck Norris facts, select an animal. Select an animal, select a different category. Let's pick movie or money, for example. Could be anything. I'm going to hit submit. And now what it's going to do, it's going to go out. See how fast that was? Chuck Norris fact. Once Chuck Norris went on a game show called Fear Factor and won the money with no sweat. It's just for fun. We'll pick another one. Let's pick something musical. Chuck Norris fact. Chuck Norris shot the sheriff, but he roundhouse kicked the deputy. So that's from the song from the 60s or early 70s, I think. I shot the sheriff, but didn't shoot the deputy. Anyways, Chuck Norris facts, highly business value web page we created here, but you get the idea that we're actually, and how fast it is too. It's running that flow. So if I go into my design studio here, and I'm going to go my home page, I do want to show you that these flows are running in the background, or the background. So I'm going to go to Power Platform, go into Power Automate. Here we go. And I would take a look at my, oh, yeah, my flows. We see here we have the Chuck Norris ones I created. So I'm just going to go into this one. This is the one we've been using for the demo. And we can see the run history here. As soon as it refreshes, we can actually see all the succeeded run flows that it's done, so you can monitor those as well. So just to recap everything, what we've done is we created a brand new Power Automate. We've gone into the setup workspace. We've created that Power Automate flow. We're calling the Chuck Norris IO, but we could call any real connector or any connection, or even our own custom connectors, whatever we want in Power Automate. We've gotten that result back. We've added that flow to our Power Pages site. We've added security roles. We captured that URL. We created a web page. We added some elements to that web page, including a submit button and a place to collect data. And then what we've done is we've added code where we're calling that Power Automate flow. We're sending it its information through an AJAX post call. We're listening for it. We're getting the response back, and we're displaying the response on screen. It is a bit of coding, it is a bit technical, but it's really is as simple as that. So hopefully this can also will help you guys kind of dream up your own scenarios or your own business problems and solve those with Power Automate. So yeah, just to quickly kind of wrap up, maybe open it to questions. I do want to talk a little bit of a couple other things after the demo, specifically about the licensing. So the way Power Pages licensing works, if you're not aware, you buy authenticated user packs and anonymous user packs. These do not have embedded Power Automate rights to them, as some of the other Power Platform licenses do. So just be aware of that. So if you're doing strictly the licensing based on Power Pages, what you're going to need is you need some supplementary Power Automate licensing. So you don't need to get a licensing for each of your users. Probably a per flow licensing would cover what you need to do. But of course, if you have other Power Platform licenses and flows, then that might actually give you the coverage that you need. So I just want you to be aware of that. And then the other thing, a bit of shameless self-promotion. You want to learn more about these types of things or keep up to date on the news and updates. Do check out, I have a podcast with a really good friend of mine, Ulrike Ackerbeck. We do a podcast every 2 weeks. We actually just published an episode yesterday where we cover all the Power Platform news and updates across the community and all the good stuff that you folks are doing and that kind of thing. So definitely check out that podcast. Greatly appreciate it. We're on all the regular podcast platforms as well as YouTube as well. So I'm going to move on to questions. And we can take those either through the chat, or you can go off mute if you'd like. Doesn't really matter. And yeah, Cheryl, I do agree. Chuck Norris's facts are a little bit more, a little less salty today. I was a little bit worried, like, oh shoot.
I know. I thought that was very brave, to be fair.
Cool, and thank you.
I don't think we have any questions in the chat, but I don't know if anyone's got anything that they would like to sort of maybe come off mute and ask Nick about today's session.
Yeah, don't be shy. Are they always this quiet, Cheryl?
Well, I think you've stunned everyone.
Uh-oh.
I know. I see. I try to follow along, and I'm not sure if other people do that as well. And sometimes I just have to go back a few steps and try things again, because it's quite quick. You probably don't appreciate how quick you are. So
Good feedback. You're right. This is why these spinners are they're really, the spinners are telling me, Nick, slow down, let everybody keep up. Yes, you know how to do this. Yes, good for you. But because I am the same thing. When I watch videos sometimes, I'm like, oh, hold on, pause. What did you do? So
yeah,
cool.
which is why it's so good that this is recorded, because we can, and I always go back through and have to, like you say, have to go back and double check things, and I get a bit lost sometimes, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And next week we have Tino on. And for those of you who have not seen or heard Tino yet, this he's a great up and comer. I'm really hoping he gets his MVP award. We nominated him a few months ago. Haven't seen him come through yet, but he's got a lot. He has that weekly newsletter on Power Pages, which is just, it's amazing. He goes out and finds all the posts and blogs and videos and plunks them in a newsletter. It's really handy. So yeah, I'm looking forward to Tino's session next week, and of course all the other other sessions coming up. Like my podcast partner Rika, she has a session coming up as well in a few weeks, and a few others. So yeah, definitely, we got a great crew coming up.
Whilst I remember, just on next week's session, I did post a message into the chat just to make sure that everyone's noticed it, that next week's sessions will be a little bit earlier, and so they will be at 8:30 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and 15:30 British Summer Time. And Victor is also intending to broadcast those recordings via LinkedIn at 12 p.m. and 21:30 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. So yeah, just cover that off, so that, I actually
Cool.
had two jobs today. One was to take the class photo, and the other one was just to remind everyone about next week's sessions.
Excellent. Cool. Well, I do, and thank you everybody for attending today. I greatly appreciate the time you're spending with us, and hoping you get some great value out of it. I do really appreciate the community.
Yeah, it is nice to see. It is nice to see a few different people on the call today. So I'm sure everyone has got loads from a session. I certainly did on Tuesday, and as I say today, reinforcing what I picked up. Then it's really good to have that double loop.
Yep. Yeah, it's good in case I forgot. I don't think I forgot anything, but yeah, it's always a new bag of tricks, or a little bit different than each time. Looks like Jaco has a question about, is next week's session that has the change? Is it only next week's session that has the change of time? I don't know, Cheryl, do you know?
I believe so, but I will ask Victor maybe to put a post out just to confirm. Because I did mention to Nick earlier when we joined the call, Victor had sent me a message to remind me to let everyone know that next week's sessions were earlier. And when I looked at the message, my eyes were only drawn to the change of time. And I had a horrible thought that maybe I'd missed a session. Thankfully not.
Cool. All right. Well, I think if there's no questions, or if everybody, then I'll give back another 18 minutes of your time that you can go have a break or do some work, or just chill and play a video game, or just, you know what you should
Have
do?
dinner?
Spin up a Power Pages trial,
Love
and
that.
build a flow and get it to talk to the Chuck Norris API. That's your
Yes.
homework. Go do that, or
Yes,
any
I
other
love that.
API, like the
That's a
web API.
Donna. That's a Donna thing, isn't it, Nick? You give the homework.
Yeah, yeah. I have a whole stack of unfinished Donna homework sitting on my desk. So, yeah. Cool.
Cool, EO. Well, I'd like to just say thank you, Nick, for the amazing sessions. I've thoroughly enjoyed them, and I have learnt loads, and I'm still practicing what you've taught me. So thank you. And it's been lovely to get the opportunity to speak to you. It's been far too long.
Absolutely.
Right.
We need to do this more often, Cheryl.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. We need to find a way to make that happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.